come back to that. But incidentally, this bubble is not explained by the usual, I have on the chart, building costs, population, and interest rates. The things that economists would normally try to bring up to explain such a major change. But I think it's some kind of herd behavior. The growth of the economy is under these, it's not just, we've had several, these are smaller pre-bubbles in the 1970s and in the 1980s. They weren't as big because they were confined more to California and the Northeast. It's gotten to be national and international, by the way, reflecting a changed pattern of thinking, I believe. Part of it is that the housing market is now more correlated with GDP growth. So the blue line is 12-month growth of the S&P Shiller Home Price Index, and the red line is 12-month GDP growth. Now, they don't match up very well, but there tend to be these co-movements, as you see. I think this is a new truth, that the increasingly speculative real estate market is correlating more with GDP growth. I wanted to show here, this next chart shows the Federal Reserve federal funds rate along with our home price index. You can see that there have been big swings in the federal funds rate. A lot of people concentrate on the rate cuts that occurred around 2002, 2003, when we were worried about deflation, and then the increase in rates after 2004 and 2005. Some people say, well, it's obvious that the Fed did it because these rate cuts, when interest rates got down to 1%, those correspond to the time of the most rapid increase in home prices. And when they brought rates back up again, the market peaked. That's somewhat, there must be some truth to that story, but I think it doesn't explain the fact that we've seen other big swings in interest rates, and it didn't do anything like that. I would say, looking at these two charts, they're kind of independent of each other. The very choppy interest rate doesn't have any obvious relation to the home price. It looks like we had this incredible boom that took 10 years, from 1996 to 2006. And I think that was primarily driven by changed public thinking about housing. And I'll document that more below. That we started to think of housing as this amazing investment. One thing that we can do is look at different cities. I have shown here 4 price indexes for 4 different U.S. cities. These are the cities that Case and I have been surveying. We've been sending out questionnaire surveys to recent home buyers. But you can see that some cities are much more bubbly than others, even though the rate of interest is the same in all of them. It's a national interest rate. So something local is behind bubbles. Milwaukee, for example, in real terms, has been very stable. There has never been, as far as we know, a bubble in Milwaukee. Is anyone from Milwaukee here? I have to be careful not to. Well, the way we got, we went around trying to find a control city. We were studying bubbles in California and the Northeast. So we asked realtors, what is the deadest city in America in terms of real estate? And they came up with Milwaukee. So we got that in 1988. And it has continued to be dead. So some cities are speculative and some are not. We can argue about why. But this shows the... It's funny how these series move through time. They go in trends for years, and then they break. There seems to be a change in thinking, as I interpret it. The red line here is the National Association of Home Builders traffic of prospective home buyers. And the blue line, the longer one that goes further back, is building permits issued for new homes. They're both leading indicators that are widely looked at for the housing market. But the funny thing about them, to me, both of these series, is that permits, both of them, were growing kind of linearly and steadily from the beginning in early 1990s until middle of 2005. And then there was like a historic change. They both start dropping. They didn't drop all at once, but they continued to drop for 3 more years, almost linearly down. So it makes me wonder what happened in June of 2005. This was before there was any hint of the subprime crisis. In fact, it was 2 years before the subprime crisis. So that's the kind of thing I want to try to figure out. People just started to get less positive about housing. Housing starts is another. That's actually starting a house, and it shows the same pattern. I have only annual data here. Again, around 2005, it peaked. It's getting better, you can see, with the latest data, but not much better. We're at really historic lows on housing construction. This is the vacancy of both apartments and owner-occupied homes. It's also at very high levels. So something fundamental is going on. The construction is down, and even the ones that are available are not being rented and not being occupied. How can this be? Well, apparently household formation is down. So people are staying, they're not moving out of their parents' house as fast. Maybe they're not getting divorces as fast. There's something fundamental. We've lost interest in housing for the while. I wanted to look at other markets, and this is farms. The green line, I guess you can't see the colors on your printout, but the orange line or the red line is the series you've already seen, home prices. The green line is farm prices. And you can see that the farms have had a similar bubble to our home prices. So there's something broad about this. But their bubble came, at least it peaked later, a couple of years later. And farms have had different bubbles of their own. This is the amazing farm bubble that peaked in 1981. What was going on? That's a whole other story. I can try to explain that, but that's history. But there's something specific to homes that is bubbling now. Now this compares home prices with commercial real estate prices, and I'm using the Moody's Commercial Real Estate Price Index. And they've got it for 4 categories of commercial real estate. And you can see we've had a bubble in all these categories boom, in all these categories of commercial real estate, and a bust too, but it's all years later. So again, there's something different. I think the psychology is different among investors in commercial real estate than in home prices. And we'll try to. So what I'm going to report on here is my effort with my colleague Carl Case to learn about what people are thinking. And as I said, we started in 1988, and the idea was to send in-depth questionnaires to home buyers, recent home buyers, to ask them about what they were thinking. The idea is that there are other people who do surveys about houses, but we wanted to have a focused survey on it that it was more in-depth about trying to find out what people think. So one thing we asked about was expectations of home price increases over the next 12 months. And we find that in 2004, people had extravagant expectations. Well, I mean, expecting 15%. Maybe that's not so unrealistic because home prices were going up at that pace. And as the bubble burst, the expectations fell to 0. And I've split it out between people who were buying a home for the first time and people who were selling another home and buying again. It doesn't turn out to be much difference between the two.